And I'm in I trust and I'm in I deliver this message. I just recently came across Tariq Nasheed'S live. And he said something that was kind of confusing to me, and I just really wanted to understand what he was saying, because again, I don't want this to be taken as me taking shots at Tariq Nasheed, but he said something I found to be very interesting. And, as someone who is, someone who's, as the public listening to the videos and whatnot, I got questions, because Tariq Nasheed tries to, give us this breakdown of our beginnings or origins here in America, or in the United States of America, as so-called Black Americans, or as he puts it, foundational Black Americans. I found it strange because he said something that was very interesting. I'm going to play it and, it'll be put in, but, here it goes.
Making us indigenous to the United States. All right? We are indigenous to the United States. We are the only true Americans, because everything about our culture is American. We didn't bring things from other cultures like that. We really didn't. We created most of our culture here. That's why, and fingerprints on it. All right?
In America, or in the United States of America, as so-called Black Americans, or as he puts it, foundational Black Americans. I found it strange because he said something that was very interesting. I'm going to play it and, it'll be put in, but, here it goes. And so in the recording, he said that, Black Americans are, and you can go and look up his words. I don't want to misquote him. And reason why I'm bringing this out is because Tariq Nasheed is a big influencer. And, amongst so-called FBAs, he's a big influencer. And, the things he say, is, it is, of course, connecting with a lot of people. The term FBA, or Foundational Black American, is connecting with a lot of people. And, but a lot of it is very confusing. Like the term Black, I got off into the term Black first and foremost. He used the term black skinned people. And I did a video on that where I'm like, so-called Black Americans, and the term Black has nothing to do with our skin color. You see, that has nothing to do with our skin color. And I was like, why is he using that term Black or black skinned people when we don't have black skin? I said we actually have copper colored or bronze skin. We are many different shades of bronze or copper color. So why is he trying to promote us as having black skin? That's not even real. So I was questioning that. And so then I questioned this other thing in which he says that so-called Black Americans who have heritage that goes back towards slavery, he says that these are foundational Black Americans who were part of an ethnogenesis, right, to, in which Africans were brought over during the transatlantic slave trade at some point, which we all know is BS. There was no transatlantic slave trade. That's a lie. All right. And there wasn't no bunch of Africans brought over here. But this is the story Tariq Nasheed tells. He says that a bunch of Africans were brought over here into America and mixed with the so-called Black American indigenous people that were here. Right. But yeah, he claims he hates the term African American. He claims to hate the term African American, but you just called us African Americans. If you saying that we so-called Black Americans whose family lineage goes back to the 1800s and beyond towards slavery and all that, if you're saying we are the product or an ethnogenesis of Africans that were brought over from the transatlantic slave trade or diaspora, whatever you say, and mixed in with so-called Black American indigenous people, then you're saying we're African and American. You can't get away from that. Whereas I say, and a lot of the people who are speaking about the indigenous thing, we say there was no ethnogenesis. There was no mixing of our people with African anything. We are completely, and I'm standing on this, we are completely American indigenous people, or what the white man called American Indians. They was not calling us Africans at one point. And when you go back into history, they didn't call us Africans. They called us Indians. And then they started calling us all these other things and misclassifying us as colored and Negro and mulatto, all this madness. They started calling us anything. But originally they referred to us as Indians. You see? You'll look that up. And they started misclassifying us until we became African Americans, until they made us into African Americans. And that's the same thing Tariq Nasheed is doing when you claim that some sort of ethnogenesis with Africans and American indigenous so-called black people mixed and we became this ethnogenesis. That's a lie. Because at one point in time, Tariq Nasheed said there wasn't even enough Africans that came over into the United States to justify claiming that we got African lineage. At one time, remember, he said a small percentage of so-called Africans made it into America, and that stopped about 1808. Very small percentage. Most of the people they brought, they didn't have cargo slave ships to bring no Africans in mass nowhere. And I proved that African slaves in America would not have served any real purpose. They would not have served any purpose to pick cotton. Anybody could have did that. And they sure couldn't have grown on the land because they couldn't even really grow on their land in Africa. And whatever they did grow there, it's not the same as trying to grow here in America. Same way the Europeans, the so-called white man who came over here, they didn't know how to grow on the soil in America. It was the American Indians, the American indigenous people, meaning us, the copper-colored races, the real American indigenous people that were growing on the land that showed the white man how to grow, that showed the Native Americans, the so-called Native Americans, the Asians how to grow, that we showed everybody how to farm this land. And it's not being talked about. The white man, he make you believe that he came and he learned how to farm the land. From who? From who? Because he's not native to America. The white man is not indigenous to America. You know, he's not from here, so you don't know how to farm. So it would take you a good while to learn how that would work, the farm. So that would have to come from people who were experienced, who have been doing it for generations. And the people that have been doing it for generations are the American Indians, not to be mixed with these Native Americans, because the Native Americans are not indigenous to America. The Native Americans are Asian, Mongolian, Siberian offshoots who were brought over into America, who were escaping Asia. So they're not indigenous to America. The people who call themselves Native Americans today, and the Caucasians who are calling themselves Native Americans, are 9 times out of 10 descendants of the $5 Indians who got on the doors rolls and started claiming that they were American Indians to get land. They call them $5 Indians. A lot of these white people that's walking around, these Caucasians claiming they got this Cherokee and this Chickasaw and all these different Indian tribes in them are a bunch of liars. They're a bunch of European $5 Indians who mixed in with the Mongolians, who are Asian looking natives who are not indigenous to America also. The only people who are indigenous to America is so-called black Americans. Now, I've been saying this. Now, all of a sudden, Tariq Nasheed's saying it. He's saying it. Go and listen to what I had put in there. You'll hear him saying, we the only people that's really indigenous to America. We the only real Americans. That came from me. That came directly from me, because you didn't hear none of these pro-blacks, none of these other people out here claiming that we the only real Americans. They was not saying that. I said that first. Now, all of a sudden, Tariq Nasheed's saying it. But where the confusion comes in is, because he copied what I said, but where the confusion comes in is you saying we indigenous to the United States. No, we are not just indigenous to the United States, Tariq Nasheed. We are indigenous to all of the Americas. You see how the deception, it's almost like a deception. You saying that so-called black Americans are indigenous to the United States of America. So what that means is you're saying that we're not indigenous to the rest of America. You saying only the United States. Now, the United States was built as a slave empire for the Caucasians. That's what the United States is. It was built on slave labor. So if you're saying we are only indigenous to that which the Caucasians, Europeans have come together to construct as an enterprise, the United States of America, which is a corporation. If you saying we indigenous only to the corporation, then it's kind of deceptive, because where We're indigenous to all of the Americas, not just the United States. The United States of America is a corporation. It is not a place. It is the United States that took hold of American lands, which is our lands. The United States European Corporation has hold of American lands. Okay. There was an America before the United States was set up. Okay, and our people were here before the United States. We are indigenous not only to North America, we are indigenous to South America, Central America, the Yucatan, all of that stuff, the Jamaica, the West Indies, all of the islands, Cuba. We are indigenous to all of those places in the Americas. All right? And he's not saying that. And he's still trying to make an African connection. Why are you trying to make an African connection where there is no African connection? There's no African connection with us and the Congo or any other places, but he's making it. And then you'll say that he's talking about FBA hairlines and whatnot. So I'm confused. If you saying that we are all so-called black Americans are African in some way, shape, or form, then why are you pointing out differences in hairlines if we all African at some point? You're saying whether 1,000 years or 100,000 years, these ethnogenesis, first you're saying we have all life started in Africa. Then you're saying there was an ethnogenesis of Africans who came in and got with the American indigenous people. That's confusion. Then you say we're not Africans. How are we not Africans if you say we are the product of Africans and indigenous Americans? That's what Tariq Nasheed said in his ethnogenesis theory, that we are the product of Africans that were brought over from slavery and American indigenous people. So then we saying we African Americans. That's what he's saying. So again, if you're saying that, you're just saying what all of these people like Jesse Jackson have been trying to, we African Americans. Because again, if you're truly claiming indigenous, then that means we are just indigenous to America, not Africa. We don't have no African roots. We don't. We do not have any African roots. You already know how the Africans look. The so-called Africans have a certain blood type, and we have a certain blood type. Remember I said the Africans tend to have, if I'm not mistaken, it's AB or a B blood type or AB. And American indigenous people or American Indians, we have an O type. We O type. Our blood type is O type. The American indigenous people are O positive. Now, if you see other races with that, that's because they're mixed in with us. If you see, and again, our people are all over the world, but our people, the American indigenous people, tend to have an O blood type. I'm an O blood type. My wives, my children, bronze American indigenous people tend to be O blood types. O positive, O negative. We tend to be that, not A and AB and whatnot. Now, if those people got mixed in with some of the people here, then that would show where they got mixed in through the blood type. You see? You're not going to really find Africans who are O types, but if you are, that means they're linked to us. The O type is specifically found in the Americas, or people who have that blood type tend to be or of the American indigenous or have American indigenous blood. That comes from us. You see, this is why a lot of these so-called Native Americans, these Asians, they don't want to take no blood test because see, if they take a blood test or a genealogy test, then it will link them right back to the Asian people they come from. It'll link them back to the Siberian bloodlines, and it will show that they are not indigenous to America. See, because the problem is people try to make the term native and indigenous the same thing, and it's not. Okay? Indigenous trumps native. Indigenous is before native. The indigenous people are the people of that land, period. They're not from no place else. They're not African. They're not Asian. They're not none of this stuff. The indigenous people of the land are just that, of that land. We are indigenous to America. Those of us who are on this side as American indigenous people, so-called black Americans whose family go back to slavery and beyond, we are indigenous to America, to this land only. Only, not to Africa, not to Asia, not to Europe. We are indigenous to this land only. So when you, and our family and our lineage is to this land only, mother and father. So miss me with the, we some ethnogenesis. That's something Tariq Nasheed making up. He's making that up. Because you just said, I remember when he just said a small percentage of Africans, and that small percentage came over here with the Europeans. A lot of them, that small percentage of Africans came over here with the Europeans. There was no transatlantic slave trade. The slaves that were being traded in America are American indigenous people. They were being traded up and down in America, going from different cities. They were being taken and putting on auction blocks from cities to cities, and they were being brought up to Wall Street in New York to stand on blocks for work. You see, skilled American indigenous people, planters, carpenters, you see, blacksmiths, people who knew how to do these things because we were doing it before the Europeans came into America. You see, he ain't talking about that. The Africans, like I proved to you, there was no African slave trade. And if some Africans trickled over here, they came over with the Europeans. They were not enslaved because the Africans it would not have made sense to bring Africans from Africa to be slaves in America. They didn't know how to speak any language, and they were very primitive people, as the Europeans said. So why would you bring those people from Africa into America? Make that make sense. Make that make sense. Why would you bring those people in to do anything? What could they do? You just said picking cotton was easy. So why would you fight wars over cotton pickers? Why would you risk your life for cotton pickers? Why would you risk your life going on a boat all the way across the Atlantic Ocean for cotton pickers, for savage people that you want to pick cotton and cut tobacco and whatnot, when you could have got just poor white people, all these people that was in America who would have did it for next to nothing, would have did it just for food, would have worked for you and lived just for land and live on your land and work just like a slave. That way you wouldn't have had to be doing all this stuff you did to go and get these people. See, that's the lie right there. That's the lie. They're lying. You fight, you go to war and you fight and have civil wars and things over slavery for cotton pickers? No. Stop lying. It was the American indigenous people, our people, that were doing everything in this country. From all kinds of labor in this country, from growing, not just picking, but growing cotton, picking cotton, growing tobacco, picking tobacco, right? That was our people doing that. Harvesting and growing food, right? Slaughtering animals, catching animals. We did everything. Carpentry, right? We did it all. Our people was doing all of that. Building things. You see? Construction. Working on the railroads. All these companies had slave labor. All these they had slave labor. The states would rent out slaves, or plantations would rent out slaves to work on railroads and all kind of stuff. They had our people pimping our people out, working on railroads, working on plantations, working on chain gangs, working to clear roads. They had our people doing everything. While they sat on their ass, they didn't do nothing, these Europeans. And they reaped all the benefits from it. You see? And that wasn't no Africans that was doing it. That was our people doing this. The American indigenous people, the real American Indians. And it's just really, I'm not, it's really just, it comes off in a way as disingenuous when Tariq Nasheed, again, no shot at him, but when you misrepresent, you painting a picture that is, deceptive in a way. I don't know if you're trying to do it, but you painting a picture that's deceptive. That we are the product of Africans and Indians. Like you basically saying we generic Africans. If you saying we the product of some ethnogenesis of us mixing in with Africans mixing in with our American indigenous heritage, then you basically pushing the ethnogenesis thing. You pushing that whole African American thing, whether you know it or not. We African Americans, if that's what you're saying. But then you say you don't like that term, but that's what you're saying. And then it's nonsense that all life started in Africa because you heard it from some Caucasians say it, Darwin or whoever these Caucasians is. Man, that's all lies, man. All life started in Africa. That's nothing but a theory. It's still a theory that has never been proven because you found some old bones in Africa and you said these bones is millions or something years old and whatnot. That's a damn lie, man. That's cap. That's cap, because I proved it was cap, because that would mean you would have to go all over the planet and search every square inch of the earth to see and check and see about bones and how old they are before you determine which is the oldest bones. So that's cap. You know they didn't search every square inch of this earth to find remains. They did not. They did not. And that's just a theory. And it's a theory that don't even make sense. Because you saying you can't even trace that line. Again, scientists have not been able to trace that line between life starting in Africa and all life. That's a theory. That is a theory. And theories can be debunked by logical thinking. You see, that's the problem with so-called black people. When a Caucasian says anything, or somebody with a DR in front of their name and a PhD in the back, and they calling themselves scientists, this ologist, that ologist, they could say anything and you tend to believe them. They can say anything. They can make any kind of so-called scientific, theoretical assertion, and y'all tend to accept that as the truth when it's nothing but a theory. A theory that makes no sense. I told you, I'm not going with people's theories and what they say. I'm going with what makes sense. I'm going to ask myself, because I have the ability to think. I don't just believe what people say. I think about what's said, and I think whether it makes sense or not. Because people say a lot of things. People lie all the time. You should know that, Tariq Nasheed, because people come on your show all the time, especially these, as you say, these suspected white supremacists, and they just say all kind of damn lies. Like 50% of the damn crime rate is due to black men. That's a damn lie. That's a lie. Big lie. But if you don't check that, and you don't say, and you don't use discernment to see whether that makes sense or not, according to what you say about who we are, the number we represent in the population, that don't even make sense. They just saying stuff because that's their racism coming out of them, just making up stuff. They don't got no problem with lying. These are the same people that tell you the ancient Egyptians were white people. The ancient Americans, the indigenous people, the Olmecs, Aztec, Inca, are now, they're going to become white people or Asians. The hell with how they showed themselves on the wall as bronze, copper-colored people, as indigenous people. They white. You see, these people don't mind lying. These are the same people that lie about hip hop is 50-50 Latino, because all those terminology, Latino, Asian, European, that's all considered white. Whenever you see them putting that nonsense there, that's them trying to push whiteness into our culture and heritage. Whenever you hear them saying stuff like hip hop is 50-50, they basically saying hip hop is 50-50 black and white, because Latino is nothing but a link or an extension of whiteness. You see, they hide behind a lot of terminologies that really mean white, like Latino mean white. When they say Latinos had a hand in hip hop, they mean white people, because Fat Joe, he's white. And all you Latinos with the straight hair who don't got the dark skin, and you got the straight hair, y'all white. Y'all classified and considered white. That's nothing but colonization. When you sit up here and you say Asian and black, you saying white, because Asians are considered white. The Native American, they're white. When they say, oh, the Native Americans are American Indians, what they saying is the white people who came with the term Native Americans from the Know Nothing Party, and the Asians that grouped onto it later. That's why you see these Native Americans are either Asian or white and Asian mixture. Yeah, those are the people who are trying to cosplay as the real American Indians, meaning us, the real American indigenous people, which is why they wiped out our history and heritage and called us black people. We were called black people because they wiped out our true identity in this country as American indigenous people or American Indians, the real American Indians, not the fake Native Americans. And I just again, Tariq Nasheed is coming off as deceptive, man, with the whole African